something I do want to ask if you saw is a story we recently covered with Jim Ross on Grilling JR. We talked about Sunny and how maybe at times she wasn't given a fair shake in life. And of course, we know now, that she had some mental health issues that were undiagnosed all those years, and substance issues were born out of that. And now she is behind bars. So just a tragic, sad tale all around for Sunny. But there is a legendary story that once when she was overseas in 1996, she ended her romance, if you will, with Shawn Michaels. Of course, that was quote unquote behind Chris Candido's back. But on this same tour is where someone allegedly defecated in her food and she wanted to come home. As the story goes, the company needed some tapes to be returned to America, and normally that would go back with a referee. But HR at the time decided maybe we can avoid a lawsuit and just bring her home early. She didn't sue the company, but apparently she did eat a shit sandwich, John. What do you remember about this?
First of all, I'm not going to answer anything about her and Shawn Michaels. That's a personal thing between them two, and I have no idea what was going on. I've heard all the rumors, and I've heard Shawn talk about it. That's something personal, and I'm not going to. Shawn is a dear friend, and I'm not going to address any of that because I don't think it's pertinent, in my opinion, to the story. I was there on that tour. So that was my first tour. It's pretty cool. We had a lot of fun. I'll tell you some stories about that tour. That's where I got the name Clothesline from Hell from Stone Cold Steve Austin. But the tour was awesome. We were like over there 23 something days, and Scott and Kevin had already signed with WCW. So they didn't have to come. They did this as a favor. Now understand, Germany was the only place we made money during that time. We were not making money big in the States. And so you would get a lot of times, Tim White would come around and Arnie would come around and give you a draw. It'd be $200. Barry Windham always told me when they're offering money, kid, always take it. So he'd always take the draw. We would owe the company money sometimes. Oh, business was so bad. So you get a draw somewhere down in a show somewhere, $200. The company would send you a debit for $50. I don't think they ever paid you below $150. But they would send you a debit for $50. So when you talk about business was bad, business was terrible. And who's to blame? Nobody, because those same stars created the biggest era maybe in wrestling history just a few years later. But Scott and Kevin didn't have to go on this tour.
Right.
They did this as a favor to us. And I think kind of their way of saying goodbye, it was really cool. And they were great on the tour. I can't, it's just, I see all this stuff on the internet. It's like, I was there. I don't know what they're talking about. So what happened with Sunny was people talked about, I saw some of the notes that one of your guys sent from, the newsletters back in the day about how they tortured Sunny this whole tour. That's not true. 100% not true. So I'm sitting there on the bus. Now, I don't know anybody. I've come in. I just know a few guys that I'd worked with in Europe and Japan and Texas. And so me and Gerald Briscoe are pretty good friends already. And I would sit up front with him a lot. We play cards and things like that. So I'm sitting there with Gerald Briscoe, and Sonny gets on the bus, and George Steele is sitting right next to us. Me and Gerald Briscoe are sitting there facing each other in one of those chairs, that has a table in between. So we're sitting there opposite the table so we can play cards. And she gets on and announces in front of everybody. She goes, I missed my tanning. I missed my workout. And I missed going to the gym because Scott Hall and Kevin Nash went out last night and were late for the bus. And she goes, something needs to be done about this. And I'm sitting there. I looked at Gerald Briscoe and I said, she just stooged two guys who don't have to be here, who don't care. And there's nothing you can do to them in front of everybody. And I sat there and looked at Jerry and I said, this doesn't end well. And Jerry goes, nope, it sure doesn't. It wasn't 2 days later. That's when they said, what did Sunny have for breakfast? I don't know. She had a shit-eating grin. Oh. there were a lot of great jokes that came out of that, but that's the reason it happened. The reason it happened was not because these guys were. Listen, you can say whatever you want about what I say did. I'm not going to say who did it. It was not Scott and Kevin, by the way. I will say that, but you can say whatever happened about how bad it was. But it was not just a matter of, hey, we're going to pick on her. It was she was stooging the boys, and the guys didn't like it, and they took matters in their own hands.
Can you imagine in any, like in my mortgage office, can you imagine if someone shit in the boss's food? Like that would be crazy. Like what is going on? Like
It's Conrad, it's inexplicable. It is inexplicable. I mean, that's something that no human being should do. And it happened. It happened quite often back in the day. I'm not saying it's okay. It's not. But the guys used to end up with, turds in their bags, turds in. It was. I like to see.
Why are turds so over in wrestling, do you think?
What's that?
Why are turds so over in wrestling? Because it feels like Mr. Perfect, Sean Walt, there's a handful of serial shitters, and this has become their thing. Like, I don't even, but these stories don't exist outside of wrestling. I've never heard football stories of people shitting in each other's food or any other genre of entertainment.
Well, now wait a minute. There's some with baseball players. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I was, oh my goodness. I don't know if I should say the name because he's a dear friend, but we were on a hunting trip one time and Draws came up to me and said, "Hey, I just caught so-and-so about the shit in my bed." And I said, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. It's actually pretty cool. Shit, Draws goes, "Yeah, it actually kind of is." And Draws wanted to fight him, but it was.
Wait, hang on. Are you saying Wade Boggs used to shit in people's beds?
I think Draws caught him before he did.
I love it.
See, I'm trying not to give out Wade. Wade's one of the best guys ever. He had one of the greatest ribs ever on Jeff Foxworthy. I mean, just one of the greatest ribs ever on Jeff Foxworthy. Foxworthy walked into the bar one night. We're at this hunting thing, and he put his wallet on the bar, and he goes, "I can't whip anybody in here." And we're full of wrestlers. Steiners were there. Big Boss Man was there. He said, "But somebody will beat up Wade Boggs. You can have whatever's in my wallet." It was one of the greatest things ever.
I love that.
So Draws comes to me. Draws had done something to Wade. I can't remember what it was. And we're on a hunting trip, and Draws comes down to me and goes, "I just caught Wade trying to shit in my bed." I just started laughing. I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, he was taking a dump in my bed." And I said, "He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. The guy's got 3,000 hits." And he goes, "Yeah, it is pretty cool." He goes, "But he shouldn't be shitting in my bed." I go, "Probably not." Draws had done something, horsing around with him and realized that Wade was a different level.
Well, we'll get more shit stories in the future with John, I'm sure. I do want to talk about your run in WWE. I think you make your debut on Superstars in early '96 against Bob Holly. Bob has developed quite a reputation in the internet wrestling community. What was your experience like working with Bob?
I loved working with him. I worked with Bob so many times. I don't know how many times, probably 50, 75 times, I'm guessing. We were first match every single night. I mean, we were first match for this loaded card every single night. It was awesome. I worked also a lot with Al Snow and Marty Jannetty, but mainly with Bob. I mean, Bob's a super tough guy, and he loves to work hard, and he loves stiffing people, and he loves getting stiff back. Bob just enjoys playing rough, and it was fun. I really enjoyed being out there with Bob. It was a lot of fun being out there with him, wrestling with him. We had a lot of fun working shows.
Cagematch.com or .net rather says you've shared the ring 83 times with Bob Holly through the years.
Holy cow, that's awesome.
Yeah. What was
you never know when you're guessing, how many matches you had. You say, "Oh, I wrestled him a couple hundred times." It's always the phrase. When I said 75, I'm just guessing, but that's what I thought. So it's good to have an actual number. That seems right.
I mean, it's pretty crazy too. When you take a look at 96, I mean, it feels like you worked him pretty regular all over the country. San Jose, Austin, Beaumont, Tyler, Houston, Hershey, Peoria, Moline, Rosemont, Anaheim, Albany, Worcester, Portland, Bangor, Spokane, San Francisco, Fresno, Anaheim, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Nova Scotia. I mean, you're all over the place. When you work a guy that many times in a run like that, say because I think you got going with him in like March, and you guys work it pretty consistently through November. When you're working a guy that often, do you have, because we've all heard like the legendary stories where like Harley's laying out a match with Terry or something like that, and they would say something like, "Hey, we're going to do Dallas tonight, or we're going to do St. Louis." like they had a series of matches that they like to work together as far as their chapter and verse of the story of the match. Do you have that sort of thing with Bob Holly, or are you guys having shorter matches and you're trying to work on a few things you think you might do on TV, or how do you keep yourself entertained when you are going to be working the same opponent around the horn like that?
We were working one time in Nashville. We were on TV, and we thought we were on later in the night. And it turned out I'm sitting there in my boots that just, thank God, had just been laced. And one of them I was lacing up the other one, and they go, "Hey, John, you're up." And all of a sudden I hear Bob Holly's music playing. Thank God his music was first. I'm in the locker room. And I didn't realize where we were on the card. They had changed it or something. So I go flying up to Gorilla. There's Bob. And I said, "Bob, what are we doing?" And he told me like 8 minutes or something. I said, "Who's going over?" And I can't remember who it was. It me or, obviously me or him. And I said, "Okay, I'll see you out there." And that was it. We didn't talk over nothing. It was just fun. And we tried to do things different, but also we had a responsibility, Conrad. We had a responsibility to start the show off right.
Right.
We didn't start off with the yay boo spot. The crowds were so freaking hot. There's a temptation there to work the crowd a little bit. Well, you got to say that for the big guys. You got to say that for the guys that are in those spots that do that and people come to see. Not for me and Bob Holly. And we knew that. And so we would go out there, we go straight into the match. We didn't go outside the ring. We just had a good 6 to 10 minute match and got out of there and just tried to be entertaining, get people in their seats, show them something, a lot of fun, a lot of movement, a lot of, hopefully entertaining match. But that was the whole reason we were out there, was to get the show started off right. And we took great pride in that.